Hello you guys, it's Asmara and welcome back to the channel. First of all, before we get into the video, can we just take a moment to appreciate this little bust down silk press? I haven't had straight hair in like 5 or 6 years, so this is something new for me. Leave your compliments in the comments. But anyways, happy Black History Month, y'all. Throughout this month, I'm going to be repurposing some of my existing YouTube content that brings up conversations about Black culture, Black struggles, Black issues, just to kind of keep the conversation going. The excerpt I'm sharing today is from my live stream panel discussion I did about my essay about the whole concept of play and why play is necessary in adulthood, and also why play is critical in childhood. I know most of my viewers here are gamers, and so obviously you can kind of relate the concept of play to playing a video game, but I also want to make sure we're expanding our perception of play and realizing that fun, leisure, rest, it can show up in many different ways, and so this topic is definitely more universal. But yes, the original essay sets the foundation for this video, and then my live stream goes more in depth about play inequity. I also provide lots of examples about the deterrence that cause people to not achieve a play state as often. Some of the societal factors, the social pressures, and today we're going to be specifically highlighting the race disparities for Black and brown children being able to achieve a unbridled play state. A little trigger warning, I do briefly mention Tamir Rice's story, so if you don't want to hear Black trauma stories, I completely understand. So when you see his picture up on screen, feel free to skip past that part of the video. I don't show any footage or go super in detail, but it is something I bring up in this video as an example, and I just wanted to give y'all a heads up. Alright, but with that said, let's get into the video. So yes, we talked about play personalities. I shared a little bit about my personal play personalities. And now we're gonna get into our next agenda point, is the topic of privilege and inequity and this idea of who is allowed to play. So between the original essay and the conversation we had here, we've established that play is not only crucial for a child's development, but is also vital for adult success. And when I say adult success, I don't just mean monetarily, I mean sort of in a life fulfillment type of way. And even though it shouldn't be this way, there is a cultural expectation, at least in American society, that play, fun, and leisure is less important upon adolescence. But let me know if you're from a different culture or a different country where maybe the, cultural norms are different. I would love to hear about that. However, like many things in our society, our already low tolerance for leisure that we kind of culturally accept as fact is significantly heightened when it comes to our attitude towards women and those of marginalized and intersectional identities expressing play. We're going to start off by reading some examples from Ruha Benjamin's 2024 book called Imagination, a Manifesto. So Ruha is a multidisciplinary scholar, writer, and educator. She's currently a professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, and her work most prominently teaches about the relationship between innovation and inequity, knowledge and power, race and citizenship, health and justice. Let's start with this first story. In 2015, Texas teenager Ahmed Muhammad was interrogated, suspended from school, and fingerprinted for constructing a clock inside his pencil case. He used a small circuit board, power supply, and digital display, inventively transforming the case. Dismayingly, his teacher and principal suspected the clock of being a bomb. Through the distorting funhouse mirrors of white supremacy and anti-Muslim hatred, he was deemed guilty instead of gifted, threatening instead of talented. And so this is a prime example of persistent negative stereotypes, in this case, folks from the Middle East, or of folks who are in Muslim communities, being seen as terrorists. And these persistent negative stereotypes create harmful beliefs that impact our biases against already vulnerable members of our society. So now we're going to read another example from this imagination book. In 2013, 16-year-old Black teenager Kiera Wilmot did a science experiment mixing toilet bowl cleaner and aluminum foil in a water bottle. It caused a small explosion on school grounds, and she was immediately expelled. The Florida Assistant State Attorney charged her with 2 felonies, filed in adult court. The charges were eventually dropped as part of a diversion program that allows people facing criminal conviction to meet certain service requirements instead. However, rather than being allowed back into her honors classes, Kiera had to finish her junior year at an alternative high school, a euphemism, in this case, for a school for bad kids. There, Kiera felt intellectually uninspired. As she shared with the American Civil Liberties Union, "I'm not getting the challenge that I used to have. I don't have homework, there is no German class, and there is no orchestra." It is doubtful that Kiera would have been treated with such contempt were she not Black, because of the zero-tolerance disciplinary policies that uphold rigid rules and end up alienating and pushing out many young people. So this is our second story, and I feel like the story of Kiera really just shows that our biases and our prejudice has real-world impact. First of all, Kiera should have never been expelled for doing her schoolwork in the first place, because looking more into the story, because I was interested in hearing more details, the experiment that she did that caused that small explosion was actually for a volcano. Now, many of us have heard of, the classic volcano science fair project. I'm not sure if it was specifically for a science fair, but it was for science class. And she was initially trying to make smoke, but it ended up exploding. Which, honestly, if you ask me, volcanoes explode. So, in my opinion, she should have gotten A. She went above and beyond. But, how dare she do her science work in science class and get expelled? This is just a prime example of how grace and benefit of the doubt is granted to some kids, but not others. We typically discuss social inequity in terms of violence, such as police brutality and hate crimes, but social inequity is also prevalent in discriminatory practices that affect our well-being and sense of belonging. So, the subtext of both of these stories, what happened to Kiera Ahmed, is this. Some people are awarded for play, while others are criticized and punished for it. Those criticized are more likely to be Black or brown. Of these teenagers, honestly, Kiera and Ahmed sound like they could be the creator, artist, personality type, or maybe even the explorer of how inventive they were, with Ahmed making a functioning clock and Kiera making a functioning volcano. And as we discussed earlier, healthy play habits have a direct impact on our social and emotional health. Play is definitely a form of self-care. So with that being said, what type of messages is that communicating if some people are being punished for being creative and innovative, like Kiera and Ahmed, or being playful in another form or fashion? What impact do you think that this has? What inadvertent messages is this communicating? One of the sources that I actually used in my original essay was a documentary on Netflix about the origins of Black Barbie, which is a phenomenal documentary if anybody, wants to watch it. Anyone loves a good history doc or Black history doc. And one of the people they interviewed, her name was Byrony Goods. She's an actress, a comedian, and a self-proclaimed Barbie. And she said this quote, which is pretty simple, but I think was pretty profound. And the quote is this: "I thought it was a white woman thing to be adventurous." And she was explaining how her idea of play and freedom and fun being associated with whiteness is one of the reasons that she really connected to Black Barbie, seeing that Black women could be those things too. So although simple, I think this quote can speak to a larger pattern we see in society, where some people are permitted to play while others are not. So one of the factors contributing to play inequity, which I discussed in the original essay, is adultification bias. So we broke this up in two parts: parentification that occurs within a home, and adultification more generally, which occurs outside of the home. Adultification bias is treating or considering a child as if they are an adult or more mature than they actually are, often in a way that is developmentally inappropriate and harmful. And the bias part is about the fact that this is more likely to happen to Black children. So in the essay, I gave some examples from this study, Girlhood Interrupted, the Erasure of Black Girls' Childhood. And this study was conducted by the Center on Gender Justice and Opportunity by Georgetown Law from Georgetown University. Some of the quotes that I included, let me pull it up here. 1354. Here we go. So these were a couple of quotes that I included And one example I gave is how Black girls tend to get sexualized or unfairly prescribed as promiscuous or fast at young ages. And here are some examples. So in 6th grade, the school nurse asked my aunt if I was sexually active. And I was like, what? Nobody has sex. I didn't know anybody that had sex. And it was so crazy to me, and just thinking that she would never think to ask my white friend that. So this is one example. 6th grade. So that's like 12 years old, 11 or 12. This next example is from a different story who shares a similar sentiment, saying, teachers assume that the reason I'm wearing short shorts is because I want to like get all the guys. So this is somebody who is in that 13 to 17 age range. So very young. But I wanted to follow up with some other data from that initial research. This is again from Georgetown Law, and there's a really great video about the harms of adultification and the way that this disproportionately affects Black girls specifically. And so I wanted to play a short video. And once again, my sources are in the description. So if you want to see it in full, go ahead and watch you can check it out for yourself. But I'm just going to play an excerpt about the harms of adultification bias. Let's see. I'm going to play this slightly faster just so I don't go too long. I'm gonna play this in 1.25 speed. Should I put it in? Yeah, sure. I'll put it in full screen mode for y'all.
In the United States, adults view Black girls as less innocent and more adult-like than their white peers starting as young as 5 years old. This is known as adultification bias. A groundbreaking study by Georgetown Law Center on poverty and inequality found that adults believe Black girls need less nurturing, less protection, less support, and less comforting. And related studies show that Black girls are punished at a disproportionate rate in schools and the juvenile justice system. These statistics reveal an alarming reality, but do they reflect the experiences of Black girls and women? We conducted focus groups across the country to hear about their lived experiences. They told us that Black girls often face higher standards.
I feel like you cannot make mistakes as a Black girl.
All kids make mistakes, but in similar situations, Black girls are treated differently. A white girl's mistakes might be met with sympathy and understanding. But time after time, Black girls are punished instead because they are held to a more adult standard of behavior.
Everybody says, oh, you should have known better. They're not even acting like we're children.
Those different standards may be linked to harsher treatment for Black girls. We heard stories about adults holding Black girls more accountable for their actions.
During a Foursquare game at school, one of the balls hit a girl in the face. They just threw assault and battery on my record. I had to transfer to a different school, but the other school didn't want to take me because I had assault and battery on my record.
All right, so that's where I'm ending the video. But this is just a prime example. I want to kind of hone in on that one quote that one of the girls said in this voiceover about the idea that you can't make mistakes as a Black girl. And so with those examples we were talking about earlier about Black girls being sexualized typically at younger ages or being prescribed promiscuous or fast as children, or if it's the idea of making a mistake, like, and doing a Foursquare game and you get assault and battery on your school record for accidentally hitting someone with in Foursquare. So these various examples show that these are not isolated incidents of harsher punishment and higher standards. These focus groups were conducted across the country. Another example I wanted to give about how adultification bias affects Black children disproportionately is in this video, we also talked about Tamir Rice. So Tamir Rice is a 12-year-old boy that got fatally shot by police in 2014. Basically, a brief rundown of what happened is somebody saw this kid in the park playing with a toy BB gun that they sell in stores. And they called police and were like, there's a boy, he seems like he's a juvenile. He's probably a juvenile. I think he's playing with a gun. I think it may be fake, but I just want to, somebody to come to make sure everything is okay. Maybe that's not exactly verbatim how the 911 call went, but basically what I do know is that the person who called 911 alerted them that it's probably juvenile and they do think the gun is fake. It looks like a toy. The cop showed up 2 seconds on the scene, shot him dead. 2 seconds. That's not even exaggeration. That's what the footage showed. Police, after they shot him dead, left him lying on the ground. They reported that he was probably a 20-year-old male when they called emergency services. These instances, like this Vox article, like this headline says, these instances of people seeing black children as if they are adults are not isolated. And it has harmful effects. I also want to draw on this point that this is happening to outside people. Like, this isn't just non-black people prescribing this generalization to black kids. This idea that black kids are naturally more adult-like is common both within and outside of the black community, to see black youth as less innocent and more adult-like. This is not a coincidence. I don't know if you guys have seen 12-year-olds, but 12-year-olds and 20-year-olds look very different. So this bias is definitely real, and this is not a coincidence. And some examples that I gave in the original essay was about parentification, and that could also be a way that black parents might see their kids as more adult-like, if they, for whatever reason, one reason or another, might have to put their kid in more of a adult-like or parental-like role. And like I said, parentification is a very layered issue. Go ahead and, check out what I said in that original essay. There can be many factors, such as being low income, not really having support, emotional immaturity. If you are from an immigrant family, like maybe there's different cultural expectations of kids having to step up in different ways. And so I'm not saying, I don't want to come across as if I'm solely blaming parents. And of course, that video talks more about that. But I do just want to bring that up to show that parentification is adultification within the black community, within marginalized communities, and also outside. But it doesn't have to be the norm. We don't have to accept that as fact. So whether we're discussing how Kiera Wilmot was expelled and sent to court for conducting a science experiment in class, or the way Tamir Rice was shot dead by the police, the people who are supposed to protect them, the normalization of black parents treating their kids like they're grown, all of these sort of incidents show clear evidence of the very limited amount of grace, leeway, and understanding we are willing to give black kids. And actually, before I go to this slide, there's one more quote I wanted to play, and it's what I said about why adultification is harmful. So let me find it right here. White girls. Adultification is a form of dehumanization, robbing black children of the very essence of what makes childhood distinct from all other developmental periods: innocence. Adultification contributes to a false narrative that black youth's transgressions are intentional and malicious instead of a result of immature decision-making, a key characteristic of childhood. So yes, I just want to end on that. Adultification is a form of dehumanization, robbing kids of that sort of childlike innocence. Amy says, do parents, I think you mean, what's the word? Not adjust, but justify their teaching styles to their children when they face such harsh rules and actions that are used by supremacy? I do think that, the way you were raised, I think typically parents are drawn to treat their kids like they were raised. I feel like that idea is common. This is, again, a very complex and layered issue, and I don't think I can get super detailed into the many reasons and ways, parents decide to parent. And of course, I'm not a parent, so I'm not here trying to give parenting advice. But I do definitely think that the way we were raised, if we were raised harshly, if we had to grow up fast, that could be a reason why they may be more likely to treat their child in a similar way. But like I said, parentification and adultification, they don't have to be the norm. We can imagine a better future for our kids. And I do think it takes somebody cognizant of if they're perpetuating something that their parents did, just because they think that's the way it is, or because they think that's actually the best way to parent their child. So those are just some of my thoughts. Hopefully that kind of answered your question. One more example I want to give of ways that play inequity shows itself, or ways that people are cutting their childhood, having their childhood and play state being cut short, is I want to talk about this comment that I received. And it's about this idea of childhood being interrupted by choice, and particularly with this idea that kids act too grown nowadays. And so I want to thank Miss Professional Yapper for leaving this comment, and let's go ahead and read it and we'll discuss. So this commenter says, I love this video. However, it makes me fearful for the younger generation, especially with the rate of them adultifying themselves on social media. I wish there were more spaces in which a kid can be a kid. And I responded saying, that is a great point. I think it's important for us as a society to not see childhood or childlike qualities as cringe or a negative thing. Those subconscious messages definitely get passed down to the next generation. Every stage of life is crucial in its own way and deserves to be embraced fully. This quote, again, thank you for the commenter for leaving this comment, but I do think this brings up a really interesting perspective that I didn't think about in my original essay. And that is about the concern of youth, and particularly young girls. Typically when we're talking about kids wanting to be grown, it's especially, I think there's a unique connotation for girls adultifying themselves. But something else I did want to add to this idea is I also personally don't think that these kids who want to act grown don't just come into this conclusion, to this realization on their own. We as adults, I think, need to stop seeing the younger version of ourselves as cringe or criticizing, our child selves, and not seeing them as embarrassing because we were kids. And I don't think this is what this commenter was particularly saying, so do not take this as if I'm trying to come at this commenter. But just some observations that I've made is some of the why are kids so grown now folk are also some of the ew, doing blank is so cringe folk. This messaging definitely has an impact, and I think it is counterproductive to demonize kids we deem as grown acting, and in the same breath bully those same kids or even your own peers for activities that you may see as childlike behavior or qualities. In every generation, the kids want to be grown up. I think the difference with the young people now me sounding like I'm 40 back in my day. No, but I think the difference with this newer generation is access. We have access on how to dress more adult if we want to. We have access to the internet, to online shop. So now teenagers are shopping at stores adults shop at. We're in the era of the internet where kids and young girls can learn how to do their makeup that can look them more adult and grown like. There's not kid or teen TV shows anymore, really. Kids are just watching adult TV shows. They're also, with the access to the internet, hearing how adults are talking about children and teens. And so I do want to bring up this point because I don't think people do not operate in a vacuum, people don't just come to conclusions on their own, and I think there's more of a collective responsibility as opposed to just placing the blame on kids that want to be grown. Because just speaking briefly on my own experience as somebody who is a late bloomer, some of, things that I enjoyed growing up, some people would, and even now still today, people might see as childlike or juvenile. And so I can see that if I went to school saying that I liked these things and other adults or other kids were like, ew, if that's for kids, I can very much see, oh, this is not how I'm supposed to act. Let me go do what everybody else is doing. Let me go dress like the grown folks so I can fit in and not be bullied. So I do think it's important, a collective responsibility to see how we think about childhood, how we think about ourselves as children, how we talk to children and teens, and how we talk about them as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Did anything I talked about today resonate with you, or did you learn something new? Definitely let me know in the comments. And also be sure to stay tuned to a couple of Women's History Month videos I'm going to be doing, where I'm going to be discussing gender-based play inequity, and also this idea of if girls are really more mature, or are we just expected to be? This also has a lot of overlap with Black women and girls and how we're expected to behave in society. So if that's something that interests you, I'll be uploading those videos in March. But of course, if you want to engage with the full live stream, or you just want to hear, you know, me talk about those right now, we'll go ahead and link the live stream, the original live stream that this excerpt has been pulled from, in the description. So feel free to go watch and peruse down there. I don't know why I said it like that. Feel free to watch the video. So with that said, my name is Asmara, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye everyone.